Hey everyone, Robert Ferringo of Doc Sports here with my main man, Rafael Esparza, welcoming you to the first episode of What Are the Odds? This is our attempt as kind of senior members of the Doc Sports handicapping team to help you, the viewers, break down the numbers and the odds of any sport that you can imagine. Rafael, obviously right now, college football is right around the corner. We had our soft open last week. We are getting full bore into college football this week. So before we get to breaking down those games, just want to mention that if you check down in the description box below this video, you will find a link to Doc Sports free 60. That is $60 free, our little gift to you to be used towards any handicapper, any package, for any sport that you would like. So for instance, you could use that $60 to get two $30 top games at Doc Sports this weekend. And I don't know, maybe you want my top play from college football this weekend and Raphael's top play from college football this weekend. Well, anyway, you could use that $60 and get those picks for free. So really take advantage of that link. There's no reason not to. So, all right, Raphael, like I mentioned, college football, it's here. We've been waiting for this for months. It is exciting. It is fun. We had our little week 0 soft opening last weekend where everyone who was giggly about Florida State got slapped in the face. What are we looking at this weekend? Let's start with Thursday. We have a full slate of game. I think the two biggest games that jump off the board on Thursday are North Dakota State versus Colorado and North Carolina at Minnesota. Does anything jump out at you about either one of those lines?
Why is the public still betting Colorado games? I don't understand. Granted, I understand why they're fading them this year. Last year, everyone loved the Colorado Deons, and they were betting them total season wins over. Every celebrity was on the sideline for their first couple of games, and then they stunk and everyone left. This year, 360-degree difference. Everyone's fading them total season wins. Fading them this one. This number opened up at 12.5. A lot of money coming in on North Dakota State. Colorado money probably will be bagged in. This game alone, there's 5 games that have ranked opponents playing each other. This game right here has more action than all 5 of those games put together. I don't understand. People, there's more games than Deion Sanders out there. Granted, he's probably going to be the Dallas Cowboys head coach. Yeah, I said it next year. Granted, you just heard it here first. But it's going to be a little bit different this week. But yeah, Thursday's games, I'm more excited to see North Carolina and Minnesota. North Carolina's already talking to Big Ten. It could be very different. So I'm excited to see North Carolina versus Minnesota. And the number opened up. Minnesota 1.5. Teeter-totter. Now it's 2.5 to Tar Heels.
Okay, going back to that North Dakota State-Colorado matchup, because of what you said, because everyone feels like Colorado's kind of a joke, feels like they got burned by the hype train last year. Is there going to be a situation either now or in the near future where we're actually going to find some value betting on the Buffaloes?
It's going to be very interesting because I think if they struggle from the first, then I think Sanders and head coach Sanders are going to say, hey, you know what, pack the stats. Even though we're getting blown out, throw as much, run as much, because now we need you to be a high draft pick in the draft. So it's going to be very interesting how Colorado, if they struggle at first, I think Sanders, the QB, son of Sanders, I think he packs the stats in because he's going to look for a high draft pick. I'm very curious to see what Colorado, in a new conference, they're not back in the Big 12, and they were in the Pac-12 and not Big 10. And I'm still confused where Colorado is playing now these days, what conference. Very different, very interesting to see how they do. Remember last year, their offensive line struggled in the beginning of the season, and Sanders was running for his life. I'm more interested in how he does in the first couple of games.
You know, they talk about a lot of people tried to blame the offensive line being the focus for why they had so many issues. They couldn't stop anybody. I think their defense was ranked around 117th, 118th in the country. They were terrible. They got pushed around, and they looked like they really had no clue on that side of the ball. Now, I have to ask you, North Dakota State, you know, this is a big game for them, FCS game, and whether it was Colorado or any FBS team that they were playing, they're stepping up in class. They're one of the best teams in that football championship subdivision. So this was going to be a big game regardless for them. Do you think they have the juice to pull the upset? Or do you think Colorado is not going to be overlooking this small team because they have something to prove themselves?
I want to think this goes back up to 10. Maybe that back door will be open for North Dakota State. They struggle with mobile quarterbacks. North Dakota State. Pretty much everybody in FCS struggles with mobile quarterbacks. That's not the style of game they play. They run their smash ball Big Ten type of football. Run first. They don't do that much RPOs like we see in other college football programs. If that's the case, then I think Colorado might expose them. I think this is a close game. I'm waiting to see if that back door opens. If I can get 10, 10 and a half, I may have to put a little sprinkle maybe on North Dakota State.
Okay, looking at that North Carolina-Minnesota game, you touched on it. Minnesota opened as a very small 1.5-point favorite. That number almost instantly moved. That wasn't a trickle. That almost instantly went to North Carolina's side, and they have been a 2.5-point favorite, the Tar Heels have been, for the last month in that game. Last week, if we looked, I believe all four of the underdogs covered, and in all of those instances, if you had just followed the line movement, the way that the numbers had moved in the 2 days before the game, you would have went 3-1. I think that Delaware State game was the only number where
which had weather situations towards the second half of the game.
Well, just saying that the spread was creeping up in that Hawaii-Delaware State game during the week. It went from like 39 to 40.5. But all the other games, the line movement was kind of indicative of what was going to play out with the underdog covering. So going back to this North Carolina-Minnesota game, should we be following that sharp money and jumping on the Tar Heels in this one?
We should, but the books are sitting on a 6-figure cushion right now. They won 6 figures last week because all those underdogs going 4-0 against the spread. And a lot of those parlays got wiped out because people were parlaying Florida State with this week's game with Georgia, Texas A&M, LSU, whatever, USC money line. They were parlaying that. So now the books have a 6-figure cushion where they don't need to be so cautious. They don't know, oh, we just took this bet. Maybe we'll move it a full point instead of a half a point. So they're going to be very cautious when they do numbers this week because they got the cushion already. I don't think the dog's going to bark that much. There's some games that I see, Indiana, FIU. That's a game that comes out right off the get. I think Indiana takes care of business. I would not be shocked if they blow them out. There's games that I can see that we could see like a 53-6 type of game. This week was totally different.
Okay, 2 new quarterbacks for both of these teams in Minnesota and North Carolina. Max Johnson, we've seen him at LSU. We've seen him at A&M. Now he's taking over for the departed first-round draft pick, Drake May. For Minnesota, Max Brosmer. You probably won't recognize the name, but he was a 5-year player at New Hampshire, FCS New Hampshire. So he's stepping up with the big boys. Which one of these quarterbacks are you expecting a little bit more from?
North Carolina, even though I would love to see them roll the boat at home with Minnesota, I just think North Carolina. They have really good wide receivers, and I say this now, I don't say anything about 5-star players anymore. You'll never hear a word 5-star player because that's just obsolete now. North Carolina has really good portal players. You're going to hear me say that now. I could care less how many 5-star players, because how many 5-star players transferred out last year? A lot of them did. They picked up some nice portal players, especially on a defensive side. I think North Carolina is the side there.
Okay, so Minnesota, North Carolina is the first kind of big non-conference game because that kicks off on Thursday, but maybe the first event non-conference game, certainly the first of 2 top 25 teams going at each other, is Clemson, Georgia. A little surprised that this was a noon kickoff on Saturday. Really surprised that that's a time slot that they got, but I guess we're jumping right into it. Georgia is a dominating favorite in this game, 13-point favorite. However, as we mentioned before, that number actually opened at 14.5 when this game was still announced. It's been slowly creeping down to 13.5, where I actually thought it would stay until kickoff. And then just within the last 36 hours, that number has come down to 13. First question is, do you anticipate that number is going to continue to come down? And second question is, should we just be following that sharp money again?
I'd be shocked if it comes down because we're talking about Dabo right here. Dabo, who's totally against how college football is right now. And if they get blown out now in week 1, it's going to be a lot of chatter for Clemson, because I think the Clemson faithfuls are going to be like, hey, we need to get the program of getting transfer people like everyone else. If they get blown away, it's going to be a very, very ugly start for Georgia. Clemson already had a bad start to ACC because they lost last week to Florida State. So ACC started off rough. Clemson needs a good showing. I don't think they win this game. They just need a good showing so we don't have to hear the Dabo rumors that he's done with college football.
So these two played a couple years ago in a neutral site opener, and it was a 10-3 snooze fest that Georgia was able to win in 2021. Do you see a similar type game, similar style game played where both of these teams try and minimize mistakes, push each other around, lean on the run game, lean on that defense, just kind of ease into things? Or do you see a little bit more of a wide open game?
I see wide open. I think Georgia wants to start running. Just open up the gates. They're still mad at what happened last year. I know they have a brand new quarterback, a brand new running back system as well. They have new players, new faces. Let's show them off to the world and say, hey, we know we're still Georgia. We still play in the SEC. I see a high scoring game. It's total around 48.5. I don't see it moving that much. If it does, maybe to 49. I don't see this under coming in. I think the people are going to look at Georgia and say Georgia's going to put up a butt whooping, a lot of points on this one. I kind of lean towards over on this one, but I think Georgia flexes their muscles. I'm not sold on Dabo and Clemson.
So you think this game could be a blowout, and you think this number is justified?
Yeah, I do. I'm actually a little shocked that it keeps on dropping. If it goes to 13 right now, I have no play on this. Probably we're just going to sit back and watch it as a good game at noon, even though English Premier League Soccer still has one game. I'll have to see what game's going to get sound in my office. But at the same time, I think this can be an out of control. Georgia, all I can been hearing, I mean, you probably hear, you're closer. They're very upset with the outcome of last year, and I think they're going to flex their muscles. Knowing that the SEC, I don't want to say it's wide open, but there's other teams that could cause problems.
Okay, so I like Georgia in this game just because I don't like Clemson. For me, it's not just about the fact that Dabo is he's an old man shaking his fist at the clouds against bringing in transfers. That's just a ridiculous, undefensible, kind of stupid position. Really, right? But it's not that. It's that I don't see the same talent level on this Clemson team that we have seen in years past. When they were dominating, winning and competing for national championships, they had Taj Boyd at quarterback. They had Deshaun Watson at quarterback. They had Trevor Lawrence at quarterback. These were multiple year starter, all-American type guys. Cade Klubnik is not that. He's not very good. It's not just that I don't love Clemson's roster construction. It's that if you watched them last year, they just weren't very good. They turned the ball over a lot. They didn't execute in the red zone. They were just kind of a sloppy team. That's not going to work against Georgia. This is very much not a neutral site game. It's played in Atlanta. I know it's only a couple hours drive for Clemson, but this is SEC Georgia territory. It's going to be 80 to 90% dog fans in that dome on Saturday. They are going to get a big boost from that. We've seen this before. We saw what they did to Oregon a couple of years ago. I think they beat them 49-3 in this opener. And, Georgia's kind of the new Alabama, right? Like Kirby Smart is from that Saban tree. He's been building this Georgia program, mimicking what Alabama built during their dynasty. And what did we see from Alabama every year? We saw them playing a lot of marquee openers with a lot of big numbers. And what did they do? They covered those spreads. They did not take it easy on people. I think Georgia absolutely waxes Clemson in this game. So, all right, sticking in the SEC, well, sticking with SEC versus ACC, what about that Miami-Florida game? You can't tell me that this isn't at the very least one of the more intriguing matchups of the weekend.
I'm blown away. I want Florida, but I want 3.5. I don't want 2.5, and I did see a 2 earlier today. I'm a little bit puzzled with the line movement. Granted, Napier is the first head coach to be fired at plus 250 in most books. I want nothing to do with Bill Napier. I just thought this number, I'm not sold on Miami. We'll discuss about who I think is a top dog in the ACC with another matchup. I'm just not sold on Miami. I wasn't sold with Florida State with DJ. This conference is going to be so weird to see them automatically get a bid for the playoffs. They could have maybe 3-4 losses for that team that gets an automatic bid. But I'm not sold on Miami. I would not be shocked if Florida starts off good, but then just tails off.
Yeah, I did some radio earlier today, and one of the comments I made is that, the Big 12 this year is going to be like fun parody, right? Like there's no powerhouse team in the Big 12 this year. Like I don't think Utah powerhouse. I don't think they're a powerhouse top 10. No doubt they're going to win the conference type of thing. But there's, 8, 10 teams. They're all going to beat each other. I think it's going to be like a fun year of parity-driven football in the Big 12. In the ACC, I see the same thing. There's, the top team and like the 8th team. I don't see a big spread in there. But I think the ACC is going to be like sad, depressing parity. Like, it's not going to be enjoyable. And all those people that are buying the Miami Hurricanes hype right now, look, the bottom line is over the last 20 years, they have had one double-digit winning season, okay? The Miami Hurricanes program over the last 20 years has basically been like Kentucky, Minnesota, not even Iowa caliber the last 20 years. They're just not very good. And this idea that Cam Ward is going to be the superstar savior, I like Cam Ward. He's a perfectly fine quarterback. The guy started his career at Incarnate Word, okay? And he was kind of up and down for 2 years at Washington State. So this is not like some 5-star blue chip top 5 quarterback that they're all of a sudden bringing into Miami. Sometimes, kids, the best bets are the ones you don't make. My advice to everyone about this game is stay away. These are two coaches that are both going to be fired by, if not before the end of the season, at the end of the season. Two extremely overrated teams, two extremely shaky teams. So even though this one has, a little bit of sizzle, Miami, Florida, blue blood programs, I say stay away from this one.
I agree.
All right, next game. You mentioned, you teased it a little bit, a team that you like in the ACC. I'm going to go ahead and guess that that's Virginia Tech heading to Vanderbilt. Virginia Tech getting a lot of buzz, getting a lot of hype going into the season. I think there's a lot of people that share your opinion about them as a team on the rise. But riddle me this. They are double-digit favorites on the road in SEC country. You like Virginia Tech that much?
Look, where are they at in SEC country? What game? Where are they playing at?
Vanderbilt.
I rest my case. We're finally going to see Virginia Tech play Virginia Tech football. Remember back in the day, they had great special teams. They were able to run the ball. I think we're finally going to see the Virginia Tech we see. Put the Metallica music on now, because this team is going to win the ACC conference. I said it first. Their defense is much better now. Their secondary is really fast, but they're going to play Virginia Tech football. Special teams, the ins and outs, the hard stuff. They're going to hit hard. I love this Virginia Tech. They win the conference. They're going to be, I can't believe I'm going to say this. They're going to be one of the 4. They get the bye week on a new playoff system. Virginia Tech, the Hokies. They're not just girls basketball anymore. Football's back in Virginia Tech.
And you think offensively they have the firepower to beat numbers like this? Because, again, they were a sleeper, kind of under the radar team late last season when they went on their winning streak, started covering some numbers. They're very much not, especially, if let's say Clemson gets whooped by Georgia, Florida State has already lost. All of a sudden, let's say Miami loses also. Let's say Florida wins that game. Well, all of a sudden, the 3 top teams in the preseason of the ACC will all have losses. People are going to be looking around, hey, who could step up? Who could be this year's Louisville? Who could run the table? Looking at Virginia Tech both this week and moving forward, do you think they have the offensive firepower to start beating some of these inflated numbers? Because it's one thing to cover a spread as a small favorite, mid-tier underdog. It's another thing to start laying double digits every week and beat those numbers.
I think they do. I mean, they'll have to play the teams like Virginia, like we always see them play. Their road games are going to be the tough ones. I'm not saying this Vanderbilt game is going to be a road one, but I'm not sold on Vanderbilt football. Never have, never will be. Give me their basketball program instead. I just think this one's a great way to get a good road win, to get some momentum in that locker room, on the field for practice. Hey, you know what? We went to SEC country and stole a road game. You know what that does for morale? I think that's the reason why I think that rolls with them. I'm not going to say they're going to outscore double digits, winning 42-20 against the rest of the teams in their conference, but this is going to be a conference booster, a schedule booster to get that nice W win on the road at SEC country.
All right, another one of my top 3 most intriguing games. All 3 of them we're going to cover on this show is Saturday night, Notre Dame going to College Station, playing Texas A&M. A&M as a 3-point favorite in that matchup. Were you surprised by that number and how that number has stuck? And second question, is that number a little bit of a red flag?
It is, but at the same time, I can't trust Texas A&M. How many years have they promised us that we're here? we're gonna be a powerhouse. We're gonna win the ship. We're gonna do this, and they've done nothing. This number is perfect for me. I'm staying away from this game. I want to see how North Carolina's offensive line looks. I want to see what kind of quarterback play they do. This one's one of those ones that you said with Florida. Just sit back and watch it, no play. I can't wait to sit back and watch this one because this one's going to see, okay, is Notre Dame maybe going to be for real? Even though people say, oh, they don't have a conference, they're not going to get a bye week if they make the tournament. Yes, they do, because they don't have a conference tournament. So they will have a bye week. They'll have 2 bye weeks. So I'm very curious to see how Notre Dame plays in this game. It's no fun trip to go to College Station to try to steal a road game. If they steal this road game, hats off to you.
Yeah, I mean, Notre Dame, I love to rag on them as much as you do or anybody else. There's really no denying that they are or at least have been a powerhouse program over the last 5 years. The last 5 years, they've won double digits for the last 5 seasons. And the game that they didn't get to 10 wins, they won 9 games. And they're not dodging people. They play 3 or 4 marquee games every single year. So it's not just that they're beating up on Mighty Mites. So you would think that they would get the benefit of the doubt, the name recognition and their recent success. So yes, this number very, very, very much jumped out at me. The fact that A&M has not only been installed as a favorite, but that they've held as a favorite. I figured that public money would come pouring in on the Irish and get this number closer to a pick. I kind of agree with you. People are leaning an awful lot on the power of, Texas A&M in a night home game, right? When we haven't seen them show up in these situations for years. Texas A&M lost a lot of talent in the transfer portal. They retained a lot of talent. And I don't think there's any doubt in my mind that Mike Elko is a better coach than Jimbo Fisher. So we should see a little bit of a tighter ship from A&M this year. Last thing about this game, low-key revenge game for Mike Elko. Notre Dame went into Duke last year. Ironically enough, Riley Leonard, former Duke quarterback. You have to wonder what Elko is going to have in store for a quarterback that he knows very, very well. But Duke should have won that game over Notre Dame, outplayed them for the first 55 minutes, and then a little Sam Hartman magic late. Notre Dame was able to pull that one off. So I don't know. I'm not sure where I'm coming down on this one, but it's 100% going to be a game that I'm going to watch because I'm very interested to see how these two teams shake out. So that's it for Thursday through Saturday, but maybe the best game of the weekend is on Sunday, warming us up for the NFL. A little LSU USC action. Raphael, what do you see?
This game is very intriguing to me. This game is at the Death Star in Las Vegas. Not that many people know that it's at the Death Star.
I'm kind of surprised you're not going. Are you going?
No.
Okay.
No. I hate the traffic there. Otherwise, I would go if it wasn't for a traffic game. How many people are USC going to be at this game? I think LSU crowd is going to dominate this game because California, do they want to come to this game and see a subpar 500 USC team? Or do you want to come next weekend when you have UFC, Notre, and Canelo Alvarez fighting on the same Saturday? What weekend are you in? That's a big difference. Living in Vegas and seeing that, if there's something big on one weekend, that weekend's going to be dead because everyone comes on there for Mexican Independence Day. And you have 2 Mexican fighters fighting that weekend. It's going to be very interesting. I think LSU's crowd is going to dominate this game. This number opened up 6.5. Now it's 4.5. DraftKings has 4. And FanDuel now has 4. I'm a little bit blown away that they didn't go to stay around 6. I'm not sold on USC in this one. I want to see the offensive line of LSU. They have a new quarterback. Can they protect a new quarterback? And is LSU's defense going to be any better? Because last year's defense was awful. So we might see some points scored. But at the end of the day, I just think LSU will have better talent. I think it's going to be an LSU type of game. Because, again, they're going to have more fans in the stands in Vegas.
Okay, you worked at sportsbooks in Las Vegas before. I understand that that's not the main money mover when it comes to line movements now, but I still feel like it has a little bit of influence. You mentioned that number opened at 6. It's come down to 4. Is that homer money coming in for USC that's been pouring in on them all summer? California people, USC fans, USC people coming into Vegas throughout the summer, throwing money on that game. Is that what's pushing that number down? Or is that maybe sharp offshore money that's getting in, taking the points on that game because they could see a USC upset? What is making that number come down?
Tickets written, nothing really big, no six figures bets on USC, just tickets written, a whole bunch of tickets on USC. And I think the reason why that's happening is we all know what kind of defense LSU. Wisconsin put up 31 points against the LSU defense. And if you know Big Ten football, sorry, Wade, sorry, Max, if you're watching this, if Wisconsin was able to put up 31 points against that horrible defense, what's USC's big receiver going to do? And this USC quarterback, if he gets hot, what's going to happen then? So there's a lot of question marks for me overall. I just think LSU has a little bit more better talent, and I think their defense is going to play much better than what we saw last year.
You made a comment or a crack about sub 500 USC. Are you selling USC this year? Are you not really sold on the Trojans this year?
No, not sold on them.
You just don't think that their defense is any better than what we've seen in the last 2 years, or you just think the overall talent level isn't going to be good enough?
Defense, and I don't think they can adjust with Big Ten type football. Oregon has a better shot at adjusting because they're big up front because they always want to run the ball first and then let the speed guy goes out second. USC does not play that type of game at all. They never have. UCLA doesn't play that type of game. I just think those two schools might struggle when it comes to that type of Big Ten football. And Oregon's always played in crappy weather. So you go, what's Oregon going to do when it's cold? Oregon plays in the rain when it's windy all the time. That's really nothing. What's an extra 15 degrees lower for Oregon? UCLA and USC might struggle in November if they have to play in some bad weather games.
All right. This one, as it stands right now, is probably a no play for me. Looking at USC a little bit, I got to tell you, I know what I'm going to get from USC. They're going to score. They're going to score points. I don't care if LSU's defense is 10 times better than the joke that it was last year. They're still not going to stop the Trojans. USC is going to score points. We have two defenses with a lot of question marks, two new defensive coordinators, and neither one is very good on that side of the ball. But I know USC can score. I'm not so sure about LSU. I don't think you lose a Heisman Trophy candidate. I don't think you lose those receivers and skill players that they had. Like, that offense last year was special for LSU. They could do things against everybody. They don't have those guys. I'm sure the next guys that step up will be plenty good, but all you have to do is look back at what happened to LSU the year after they had Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, that all-timer offense, right? Went undefeated, win the championship. Now, I know LSU wasn't that good last year, but offensively, they were near that level. They went 5-5 the next year without all of those guys. So I think there's a lot more question marks on this LSU team right now, other than just can they improve on defense. And them laying points on the road against a team that I kind of disagree with you. I think that USC is going to have a little bit more of a strong fan base there for this game. I don't know. That's going to be a wait and see for me, but it's also going to be a very, very enjoyable, entertaining game to watch. So, all right, we have broken down the games that we wanted to break down and then some. We can't let you get out of here without giving the people a free play. What do you got dialed up for us this weekend, Raf?
I'm going to the best conference in football, the Mountain West. I'm going with Fresno State plus the points. You can eat 20.5. There's up 21s out there. Make sure you shop around. Make sure you have multiple books to get the best number when you're doing gambling. If you're doing futures, make sure you have a separate book just to do futures. So you don't have to sit there and look at your money all football season long on futures. Maybe just do a book for futures and then the rest, but that's another story. I like Fresno State because this Michigan team's a mess. They could be suspended. They could be losing games. They could cancel their championship. Harbaugh was supposed to be there, but they told him he can't wear khaki, so now he can't come because all the arrangements around him. This team's a mess. I want nothing to do with Michigan. Fresno State was really good. They're fourth to pick. They're fourth to be in the division with Boise State, where a lot of people are talking about how Boise State and UNLV this year. UNLV is going to be really good. I like this Fresno State. I think they'll be able to run the ball over Michigan. I'm just not so too many negativity stuff around the aura of Michigan.
And don't forget, they might catch themselves looking ahead to a certain someone next week. Big game with Texas at home next week. That's going to be an issue for the Longhorns. They're laying over 30 points to Colorado State. You have Michigan as big favorites at home. Which one of those teams is going to be looking ahead to next week? I think one of those two teams is going to struggle. I can get behind that. All right, mine is a completely off the radar game for my free play. I am taking the points with Kennesaw State. Welcome the Owls to the FBS. This is a team that's stepping up from FCS football. They are a 25-point underdog at UT San Antonio. Now, I have no beef with UT San Antonio. Jeff Traylor is one of those guys that, these last 2 years, you've heard his name. When is he going to take a bigger job? Well, he's stayed and he's building up that Roadrunner program. However, I'm not as high on them as some people. I think they're a little bit overrated, a little bit overvalued. I think losing Frank Harris, a 4-year starting quarterback, a guy who spent 7 years in college, he was the best quarterback in program history. He was the man on that team and within that offense. I think they're going to struggle a little bit to replace him. This was not a good UT San Antonio defense last year, so I can see them giving up some points. And which one of these teams is going to be more excited about playing in this game? Kennesaw State, who this is their first game at this level. They've been building up to this over the last few years. Or UT San Antonio, that has bigger fish to fry, is one of the favorites to win their conference and has much bigger games down the road. Also, under Jeff Traylor, San Antonio has won 39 games. Only 10 of them have been by 3 touchdowns or more. That's including FCS opponents. So they're not big on blowing teams out. Finally, Kennesaw State is an option team. Okay, think Navy, think Army, think those teams that run that option offense. Always great underdogs, right, Raphael? So I think that Kennesaw State will be able to move the ball on the ground a little bit. UT San Antonio lost to Army, the only option team they faced last year. They lost to Tulane, a team that runs kind of a modified option. The year before that, they played Army. They only won by 3 points. So they have struggled with this offense in the past. I think they're going to struggle a little bit here. Finally, you look at the last 2 years, you look at James Madison and Sam Houston State, 2 teams that have made that jump from FCS to FBS. In their first years, both teams were extraordinarily competitive. So I don't think that the jump from the top of the FCS level to the bottom of the FBS level is as big as some people make it out to be. Kennesaw State's going to lose this game, but I could see them losing this one around 34-13, 36-17, somewhere in that range, rather than them just getting taken to the woodshed and losing by 30 or 40 points. All right. So that's it, Raphael. This is episode 1, the maiden voyage of What Are the Odds? Well, any final thoughts?
No, week 1 or episode 1's always, make sure you know what you're doing. Make sure you don't say anything bad. Don't dropping any F-bombs. We didn't. So it was a success. So I can't wait to do this every Wednesday, because don't forget, it's almost college basketball season.
Don't even start talking about that. I gotta survive the stress of this weekend first. Don't even get me going on that.
What's so stressed about?
That's it for today. Be sure to check back next Wednesday for the next episode of What Are the Odds. Be sure to click on that link down below in the description to take advantage of that free 60. And be sure to go to Doc Sports for all of your sports betting needs. That's it. See you next weekend. Carpe diem and good luck.